appreciate you staying with us on TMI this beautiful Thursday morning here on Independent Television. Let's quickly start with our first discussion on the program this morning. I'm joined by someone who has always commented on issues that have to do with governance and leadership in this great country of ours. Leo Bagua, public affairs commentator. It's good to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's not beat about the bush over this matter. Let's start from the fact that even though President Obasanjo essentially, one way or another, for whatever it's worth, in 2015, had thrown his weight behind GMB as we knew him up until the point where he was sworn in as the president of this country. I mean, now it seems there's no love lost between the two ex-generals anymore. Let's begin the conversation from that point.
The issue between Obasanjo and Mr. President, it will interest you to know that Obasanjo has a certain character.
Okay.
He has a kind of personality which says when something is wrong, he tells you outright, this is wrong.
Okay.
But however, when those things are good, he also claps hands. And like you said, you know, during the 2015 election, we saw the support he gave to the present administration, expecting him to do the needful, expecting him to actually, you know, bring Nigeria to a certain standard, and probably the corruption that was in depth, the nepotism or tribalism that was in there, hoping that he was going to curb them. But unfortunately, he never knew that the person he was presenting to Nigerians, because he actually sell this mandate to Nigerians, that the person he was presenting to Nigerians never had that probably the moral will and the political will to deal with issues, because if you look at the issues confronting the nation today, like the senseless killings everywhere, the herdsmen issue, you know, that is ravaging the whole country. Every state is having its own fair share. I was telling you a few minutes ago, one thing in life is that it's either you have a political will to deal with issues when it happens politically, or you have the moral will. So as long as you don't have the moral will to deal with certain issues, you can't go far. And this is where we are. And Obasanjo have seen it, that presently, the president does not have the moral will to deal with these kind of issues. Ever since these killings have started across the country, who has been arrested? How many people has been prosecuted? You see, when you don't punish a crime, all you do is that you are just giving your consent to it. So Obasanjo, to me, felt ashamed, and he felt disturbed, because he actually was in the forefront of, you know, selling the mandate of this present government. At a point, I remember, you know, at a point that he tore his membership card of the other political party, which I don't want to mention, but
of course you can mention it. It's in the news. It was the PDP. So he said again at a later time that he had left partisan politics altogether for good.
Yes, but that was what he also said. That he had left it for good. But one thing is this: when good men go to sleep, evil continue to triumph. And you cannot go to sleep until you are actually not on the surface of the earth.
Let me give you a few more minutes to stay with this narrative about the Obasanjo elements in this conversation. As a number of Nigerians regard the former president as somebody who has so much of controversies wired around him. In fact, some have accused him of being hypocritical. The basis for that position is that they say Obasanjo couldn't deal with some of these issues, I mean, that this present government is up against, when he was president for straight 8 years. So it would be hypocritical of him to expect that this present administration will be able to address those issues within a period of 3 years. How much of sense do you find in that kind of argument?
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in the sense that in the first 8 years of Obasanjo, there was a structure that was laid. The structure that was laid was to make sure that the military never come back. The military never intervene in a present democracy. So that was a kind of structure which he has laid to make sure that Nigeria continues on this democratic rule. And after that, he handed over to the next president, who also built on that same level. You see, every successive government has a certain issues that is bothering them.
At every point in time.
At every point in time. But however, they've come to, the Nigerian government has, or the democracy has come to a stage that we now know and we now understand that it is better to remain on a democratic rule than to remain on a kind of either dictatorship or whatever military regime that we have suffered in the past. Now that we have gone past that, now it is expected that the next government who must have taken over, whosoever it may be, whether from the north or from the east, must put in sanity, because the fears are no longer there that, oh, the military might take over, or some section of the country might be run over by insurgency, which is unknown to us. But unfortunately, these issues that Obasanjo are projecting was not dealt with, because now what is the fears of the present government? The military is no longer going to take over. That one is there. But the insurgencies are eating up, they are digging into the country, not only through their weapon, but a different type of ideology, that they are now using human beings as suicide bombers. And people are not being punished for this issue, for these crimes that are being committed against humanity. Rather than, you know, the focus is, yes, you are fighting corruption. Corruption is everywhere in the world. We know that. It is we, the citizens of this country, that will also join hands in fighting corruption. But in as much as you are fighting that corruption, the first thing, the duty of every government, anywhere, whether in the federal, in the state, and the local government, is to ensure the safety of life and property of your citizens. And when this is not done, then what do you expect?
There's an issue we must quickly address before we push this conversation any further. Some persons have said the challenge the country is dealing with as far as insurgency, kidnapping, and overall terrorism are concerned is the fact that this government is inept. In other words, this government does not have the capacity to deal with these issues as far as security entirely is concerned. Others say, no, it's a political agenda in such a way that there's a particular aim that needs to be accomplished. That's the reason we see all of the killings, as you put it, senseless killings across the country, particularly as it stands today in the middle belt of the country. I mean, Benue is right in the heart of all of these, taking the brunt of all of these killings. And you also made allusion a while ago to the fact that we really cannot put a finger on certain persons who have been arrested in connection with all of these killings. It will appear maybe there's an agenda that needs to be accomplished by certain persons who have political interest and so on and so forth. I had to do all of this to say, let's move away from speculations. Let's move away from hypotheses and look at the real issues we're dealing with as far as security goes in this country.
You see, there is no way we can move away from it. We must speculate. Because the truth of the matter is that if you look at the amalgamation of North and Southern Nigeria, the British colony as at that time knew that this country, it was divided into three regions as at that time. They knew that it was never one. And their concern was to bring it together. So
was it doing better then?
They knew, to me, they understand that it wasn't going to do better. But there was something that was lacking in the three regions. I have certain things which you don't have, and the other guy has certain things which I don't have. So their own understanding was to bring them together and see how they can harness these potentials, three potentials that will form a nation. So, but they also realize that it carries on with its own baggages. And this kind of baggages is what we are discussing about today. Because the truth of the matter is that every human being wants to be more superior to the other. Now, what is the problem? The problem is this. If you cannot take action against any act of killing, security is much more important to every aspect of life, in every aspect of life. If you cannot prosecute those who committed such crimes in one way or the other, then you are giving your norms and your support to that crime that was being committed. And this is the problem of the country. The problem is that in this country, Nigeria, nobody is being punished for a crime, because what I see here is that we have, people who are bigger than the institutions. The government institutions are weak, and we have citizens who are, who are more powerful. You can imagine the saga with the Inspector General of Police and the National Assembly. If you represent a country, I don't see anything bad at all when you have been invited, to appear before them, and they have certain questions they just want to ask you. But because your loyalty is to the president and not to the country, then reverse is the case.
You're spinning things off for us on this discussion, and that's making a whole lot of sense, because you have made an allusion to patriotism.
Yes.
You have alleged that the loyalty of the IG, the Inspector General of Police, is not with the people, it's not with the country, it's with the president.
That's correct.
His principle, that is.
That's it.
Now let's talk about loyalty a little, or maybe a bit of love for the country. But we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of those who believe that President Olusegun Obasanjo, or ex-President Olusegun Obasanjo, is not motivated by patriotism when he says all of these things, when he writes letters to incumbent presidents. That is motivated, or rather he's writing it from the fact that he feels disgruntled because there are certain things he would have wanted to accomplish on account of the fact that he has projected a certain person or certain persons into certain offices, and because those expectations are not coming through, he becomes frustrated in the process, and then he starts writing letters and then begins to speak up about certain issues that Nigerians can readily relate with. What do you say to people who believe that is what we're dealing with right now?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I always think, and that's my understanding, that some certain persons must be somewhere to direct the affairs of the nation. They must direct. There must be, we must have elder statesmen who must tell us when we are deviating from the main focus of the country. Because whether we like it or not, Obasanjo has been there. You can't wish him out in the scheme of things as far as Nigeria governance is concerned. He was one time a military head of state and a civilian president. And across the globe, he's been respected. And if such a person, a nation whereby he comes from, is moving towards a direction that is not known, I say it's not known because it's not known to certain persons or to some other government or to Nigerians. Which way? There was this musician who says, which way Nigeria? So somebody must say, hey, this is the way. That is why most times when he writes these letters, when I read most of them, I smiled. I said, okay, if you have no skeleton in your cupboard, or if what he's talking about is not real, reply him. There must be a sense of direction. Without somebody somewhere trying to tell you this is where we are going, and we must. How many Nigerians has opposed Obasanjo? At the elders, let's take the attention away from the present president. Let's say the elder statesmen. How many of the elder statesmen in the country has engaged Obasanjo and said, okay, the direction which you are trying to pull this country to is not what we are expecting. So we are not expected to go in this direction. This is where this country must go, and this is where it must. So since none of the elders are complaining, then that tells you something. What does that say? That is to say, people are in support of the kind of letters Obasanjo was writing. The same letter he also wrote to Jonathan, and these same letters has also been written to the present president. But when he was writing that letters to Jonathan as at that time, people applauded him. This is good. So Obasanjo is doing what he does best, and no matter the criticism, he should expect more of this.
Let's talk about the letter a bit more. Some persons have come to believe, for whatever reason, that every time President or the former President Olusegun Obasanjo writes a letter, it becomes a turning point in the course of events for this country in terms of politics, leadership, governance, whatever it is. What makes this particular letter, the last one you wrote to President Muhammadu Buhari, unique?
If you need to go back to archive and see the generals that overthrew the then head of state, Yakubu Gowon, go and look at their pictures. Who and who was in that picture? Who and who was in that meeting? And in that meeting they had as at that time, what was their plan? What is their focus? So I want to believe that these gentlemen, as at that time, who were military men, because if you look at that picture, Buhari himself was there, Obasanjo was there, I think the former defense minister was also there, and I think Babangida was there too. So most of these military men, they were all there. What were they thinking as at that time? What was their focus about Nigeria? What was their belief? So if any of them is trying to deviate from, it's like an agreement. If any of them is trying to deviate, one will say, oh, remember, that letter is a kind of, remember where we are going. Because I told you in the past that the amalgamation of this country, you know, interest group has to come to play. And when the power seems to kind of tint toward the other side and some other regions are being neglected, then it calls for concern. But holistically, if you can take all of them together, I think this kind of letter will not come. Now, the pains of Obasanjo now is, you know, there's this art of senseless killing going on in the north and some other parts of the country. Assuming it's not the northern part of the country and it's in the north, it's in the east, which means the president wouldn't have said anything. If it is happening in your place, then when you come to the south or to the west, who would they cry to? So you better cry out now than, you know, allow things to go and just fold your hands and say, well, I've done my time.
Let me take you back to how we got to where we are now in the last couple of days. It was the president, Muhammadu Buhari, addressing members of Buhari Supports Organization in Abuja when he made allusion to the fact that a certain past leader cannot account for $16 billion. Again, he lacked creative ideas to drive governance, to drive development, and so on and so forth. It was an allusion. He didn't call names. But it didn't take up to 24 hours for ex-president Olusegun Obasanjo to reply to him. Now, we can't run away from the fact that till tomorrow, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo gets credit for establishing the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission alongside the Independent and Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC. A lot of persons, even before President Muhammadu Buhari came into office, had said, wait a minute, what stops the EFCC from probing what we did with $16 billion as far as the NIPP was concerned, that is the National Independent Power Project, was concerned? Many years down the line, 10 years down the line actually, 11 years down the line since former President Obasanjo left office, the issue has come back to the table, the $16 billion. Are we running away from that conversation?
There are issues that my bond gets some fingers burnt. When I started, I made allusion to you know, a kind of foundation which was being laid by the past presidents. You know, if you begin to dig in depth into that foundation, you will discover that it will get to a point you allow the sleeping dog to lie. Otherwise, when you keep digging, the foundation will crack and the building might come down. You see, Nigeria is moving towards a phase. As at that time Obasanjo comes in, they were moving out of military rule to civilian rule. And a lot of things went wrong as at that time. No doubt about that. And probably if you find out that contract of electricity, who the contract was being awarded to, or the company which was being awarded to, you discover that those companies might have something to do with, probably, I'm just speculating, the military guys, and just to probably put some quarters to rest. But when you keep digging now, digging on the past and not facing the future, there's a problem. Because if you look at the present now, I would expect that the present is the president should be more focused on the present and in the future instead of always looking back. You see, a man who always looks back can never face the future. 3 years, it's almost 3 years down the line. You and I know, you just made mentions of the institutions that was being established by the former president Obasanjo.
Right.
And I would expect that this government would have been saying these are how we also build on top that institution to make it more stronger. Or probably we discover that these institutions are not working well, and we are replacing it with a new one which will be more effective. And taking Nigerians to a different direction, letting them know that we are building a more stronger nation, which we are to be, than always looking back at your political opponents and looking back at the past president. Of course, if he's thinking, or if Mr. President is feeling that Obasanjo will no longer throw stones from where he is in his villa, that's wrong, because that's his nature. That's his nature. I was just reading the caption some days ago. He himself, Obasanjo, talked about what landed him in jail, that he also criticized the military during the Abacha rule. That was what took him to jail for 3 years, 3 months, and 30 days. So that's who he is. And we cannot continue to dwell in the past. You must face the future. Now that for the past 3 years that you are here, what difference have you made? To silence people like Obasanjo, you must do something. That no matter what your opponent is saying, no matter what your critics are saying, then the others will be there to sing your praises and say, in these past years, this is what you've done, this is what you've done. But where are we?
Before we take a break, let me ask you this. Now, it's not enough for the president to call out the former president. I mean, where you now have them almost fighting dirty, because that will take away from the effort to ensure that development is driven to the best extent we can as a country. But again, there's the election factor, the 2019 factor around the corner. Is this just about politics, or is this simply a matter of supremacy battle?
No. There's nothing supremacy about it. It's just politics. Yes. I tell you, when these two gentlemen, if they have the opportunity to meet themselves, you'll be amazed the kind of discussion and good rapport.
And the pleasantries they will exchange.
They will exchange. The thing is just about, it's about the governance and not personality. Put your person aside, I also put my person aside. But however, the country must move on. And if it must move on, it must move on for every one of us. We all know the economic hardship everybody's facing. And what the former president is concerned about, he wants to see, a more prosperous and better Nigeria. Not that he's engaged in the personality of Mr. President. So all these things is political. And be careful when you begin to see the former president, Obasanjo, writing letters and going against the incumbent, then have that feeling that, something is cooking somewhere, and very soon powers will change hands.
Okay, quickly, let's look at ultimately the implication of all of this for the country, because the average Nigerian ultimately wants to know how this will turn out in his best interests. So it's not about the bickering back and forth between the former president and Mr. President. So what does it mean? What does this mean for the average Nigerian by the time it's all said and done?
Really, is a good omen. The smart ones can take advantage of this now.
Okay.
And with this, I expect credible Nigerians who are willing to become the president of this country, young and smart Nigerians, should take advantage of this situation and begin to let people know your potentials. Because now that they are fighting dirty, the Nigerians who want to have, pitch their tent on a separate ground and make sure that who their choice will be, because they have the opportunity to make a choice. And not only that, these situations will actually bring up a kind of more better focus on governance.
The reason I asked that was when a scenario like this plays out, chances are Nigerians would rather take side than see it as an avenue to advance the lots of the country. Is that what will happen here? Taking side as against seeing it as an advantage to better the country?
No, Nigerians will not take side. They will see it as an advantage to better the country. I think from now you begin to see that some members of the probably the members of the cabinet will begin to tell Mr. President, about these senseless killings that is going on around the country, how to put a stop to it, or what to do best, so that they are now being conscious of their political party.
Right.
But however, smart Nigerians should take advantage of this and say, I also want to be a president, and I will be a better one, to keep the country safe and to, to build more economy for the nation. So, in all together, you see that this game will favor Nigerians.
Great. So let's keep our fingers crossed and be optimistic about this, because according to you, this will favor Nigeria. And that will be a wrap on this first part of our discussion. Leo Ebagwa, public affairs commentator, we're so grateful to have you on the program today.
Thanks,
and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
I'll be joining, bringing two other gentlemen to join us on this program this morning, and we'll still be looking at the issue of the feud between the former president and Mr. President. And then we also will talk about the state of security in this nation, particularly with a focus on the roles of the security chiefs themselves. Don't forget, they were invited yesterday by the Senate. Who came for that meeting? Who did not come for that meeting? We'll talk about all of this on this program. Stay with us.